This conversation includes discussions of intimate partner violence and abuse that may be difficult to hear. When I first spoke with Lily, she was in the process of moving to Italy. She told me she put a photo of the town she wanted to live in on her desktop after she left her husband, a reminder of a life she was imagining for herself long before it felt possible. Now, 12 years later, that dream was becoming real. She was starting her own business and writing parenting books. She had built a life full of love, family, and possibility. She was happy, but before that life could exist, she survived a 7-year abusive relationship and fought for 8 more years to finally be free of it. Yet that is not where her story began. It began much earlier, with a life she was able to imagine before it was real. I'm Jenny Carmean, an anthropology researcher at UCLA. My project is Voices of Hope, Survival Within Domestic Violence. Drawing on person-centered ethnographic interviews with survivors of domestic violence, my own lived experience, and the work of scholars such as Cheryl Mattingly on the practice of hope, Vina Das on the normalization of violence within everyday life, Pierre Bordeaux on how experience becomes embodied, and Judith Herman on trauma and recovery. Over the summer, I spoke with 16 women from across the country who survived domestic violence. Not to ask them to relive what happened, but to understand how they moved forward. I wanted to know what kept them going, what helped them endure, and how they started over. What I heard time and time again was something I did not expect. These women held on to something, a belief that life could look different, that their children deserve more, and that they deserve more. Not hope in any simple sense, but something deeper. Imagination became a way of surviving, tied to memory, responsibility, and the felt possibility of something beyond what they could not quite yet see. I call this imaginative endurance. It is a way of surviving that often begins early, in childhood, under conditions of instability, violence, or neglect. A child cannot leave an abusive home, so they imagine another life. Through make-believe play, stories, spirituality, kind teachers, friends, and other households, children encounter glimpses of love, belonging, and a future beyond violence. These experiences become inner worlds they can return to when escape is impossible. Rather than passive fantasy, imagination becomes a survival practice. Eventually, what once helped them endure violence becomes part of what helps them leave. This research is built on storytelling. After a lifetime of silence, many of these women found that simply being heard without interruption became part of healing itself. Speaking their truth became a way to reach other women, to show them that survival is possible, that leaving is possible, and that life can exist on the other side. But their stories also challenged mainstream assumptions. Survivors are often asked, "Why didn't you just leave?" The answer is not that simple. It involves fear, children, money, housing, love, threats, shame, and danger. On the average, it takes 7 attempts before a survivor leaves for good. Escape is not a single moment. It is a process. I wanted to understand what finally made leaving possible and what kept these women moving forward through everything that came after. Today, I'm sitting down with a woman I call Lily, one of the survivors whose voice made my work possible. We're not here to focus on what she went through. We're here to listen to how she survived, how she kept moving, and how she found peace again.
Hi, Lily. I'm so happy to talk to you again. Thank you for helping me with this project.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
When you think back on leaving, what did that process actually look like for you?
It was scary. I was actually terrified. I didn't know if I would succeed in leaving successfully with my child. I was terrified that he would figure out what my plan was, that it wasn't just an emergency trip to see my mom who was sick, but it was actually an escape plan. I feared that if he figured it out before I was safely out of the country, that he would kill me. And in the rage of that violence, that my son could also be hurt, as he had been in the past, or my own unborn baby that I was still carrying.
Was there a moment or an event or realization that felt like a turning point when you decided it was time to go?
There were many, and I didn't, but there was the one defining moment. So there were many points when I knew I should have left, and there was one time when I actually had left but came back. This time, I decided to go through with it. Though that I just was talking about, I knew I had to leave. When he told me in cold stone calmness that he was going to kill me. All the other times there was violence, there was a fight, a situation, a trigger. But this time, the issue that had made him mad had already happened. We drove home in silence. And only when we reached our apartment did he tell me calmly, with my toddler son in the back seat, that he was going to kill me. And he told me to get out of the car. I looked at my son, and then I got out of the car. And he drove off with my son in the car.
Mm.
I went up to our apartment. I locked myself in the only room with the deadbolt, the bathroom, and I waited. I did this hoping that he would come back with our son and that he would be calm. I knew at that point that there was no turning back. I had to leave. And I just prayed that I would be able to do so in time.
It's terrifying. During this time, was there anything as you went through this that kept you going? Like in these hard moments, as you finally laughed and you were able to escape, was it something that was like a symbol or a goal, a belief, a routine?
At the beginning, it was really, really hard. And there wasn't even the ability to hope until a bit later. So the only thing that kept me going was the need to protect my children. There were many days I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't feel like I could continue to fight. I didn't know when the nightmare would end. And it wouldn't. All I knew was that I had to keep going forward. I had to keep trying. I had to keep fighting. And I had to keep doing the best I could with any help I could get to get these kids to a better place, a safe place, a place where we weren't all living in trouble.
As you're going through this, what did it look like? What did the healing look like in your day-to-day life?
Healing was something that wasn't even possible until we were actually free of the trauma, the nightmare of leaving in the aftermath that was created in the wake of it. As you said, it took 8 years and a lot of tedious court battles, and it was extremely painful. But once we were finally safe, many, many years later, healing looked like all of us being in therapy. I went through a lot of different types of therapy, and they all helped a bit, but it was very slow. I found EMDR, and that ended up being a very potent tool for helping me move through some of the really tough trauma blocks. For my children, they were also in therapy and seeing professionals for the trauma they had experienced. Our day-to-day life looked like trying to keep a routine, trying to keep things as normal as possible. I was fortunate that I was able to stay home and not have to work outside of the home. I don't think my nervous system could have handled working in my profession and being able to provide my children with the things that they needed emotionally at that time.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, I was able to find work as a teacher online, and I was able to start a box fitting business. So those were the two things I was able to do while being in the home and have some independent income of my own. I was able to do those things from the home while also homeschooling my children, something that they also very much needed as they weren't ready either. And I was just trying to be available for their needs as much as I could, as well as taking the time for my needs, for healing as well when I needed it. So that was our routine.
I love that so much. And that you were building on this life.
Mm-hmm.
So then, who are you today?
Mm-hmm. It is so hard to think about the past. Feels like a different life. I am someone who I never could have imagined. I'm living a life beyond my wildest expectations. I started a business, as you pointed out, that has turned into something deeply meaningful, something I really believe has the potential to do so much good for other families facing situations like the one we were in. After my divorce, when my son began showing signs of severe mental illness, I was trying to manage my own trauma while watching my son become seriously ill. Resources were incredibly hard to find, and many of the things we were told either didn't fit our situation or actually made things worse. So my son and I learned through a very difficult path, but one where we were determined not to give up. We kept trying and trying, making many mistakes along the way until we found things that worked. Then we found more things that worked and kept building up from there. Sometimes we failed and took a few steps backwards and then moved forward again. Through all of that, I learned that change is possible. I learned resilience, and I learned the most extraordinary, beautiful rainbows can come from the darkest skies. Now we are on the other side and experiencing all the colors of that rainbow. Both of my sons and I are involved in this project of bringing hope and clarity to others. It is more beautiful than anything I could have imagined. I wake up every day loving my work, and I get to work alongside my adult children. We all work remotely. And as you stated before, I am in the process of living between two different countries, Italy and the US, but spending most of our time in Italy, a country I truly love. And I actually have everything I've ever wanted come true, and I still can't even believe it.
I love that for you so much. This rainbow image is magnificent. It really is. So if you could speak with someone who is still living inside an abusive relationship right now, what would you want them to know?
Like I would say, I know it is scary. I know right now it feels like all you can see is darkness and that you're staring down in a tunnel and it looks dark all the way through. You don't know if you have the strength to make it through or if you'll even survive it. I want to tell you that it is possible. It's not easy in the beginning, but if you keep putting one foot in front of the other, if you keep doing your best for the right reason, if you stay true to yourself, true to your mission of protecting your children and doing what is right, there is light at the end of the tunnel. And there can be a life waiting for you better than anything you could have imagined in your wildest dreams. It's waiting for you, and it's waiting for your children too. But it will not get better on its own. You already know that. So do whatever you need to do. Keep yourself safe, but start planning your escape in the safest way possible. And I wish you all the luck in the world.
Those are some beautiful words of encouragement for anyone who's thinking about it. What an inspiration you are. I appreciate your time more than you can imagine. And, what you've shared is something that I've heard from so many of the women that I interviewed over the summer, that leaving is not the whole story. Leaving matters, of course, but what comes after matters too. There's profound healing and storytelling. Again and again, I learned that people didn't just want to survive, but they wanted to be heard. And when they're heard, their stories can become a way of reaching someone else. This is what Voices of Hope is about. It's about not asking women to prove their pain, but listening to how they found the courage to begin again. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny.
I want to thank my participants whose stories made this work possible. I also want to thank Robert Lemelson for his generous support. Thank you to my advisors, Philippe Bourgois and Canna Jigsaws, and to the many incredible professors who supported my work. Thank you to my peers for their encouragement. And finally, thank you to my family, whose patience and love sustained me throughout this project and advocacy.